So I'll run through the first part of the agenda all the way through this month's focus, and then we'll see where we're at and hand it over to Louise for the second part of this meeting. So announcements. In case you are not aware, we have some EOLs that have happened or are coming up. Blueprint has EOL'd on December 31st. And in about 2 weeks, Gazebo 7 and Gazebo 10 will also reach EOL. I believe that will leave Gazebo 9 and 11 as the available options after mostly the end of January. And coming up soon, towards the end of the first quarter, is the Edifice release. So you can track progress on GitHub, and we'll have more announcements as it gets closer to that release date. Feel free to speak up, raise a hand if you have any questions about any of this. Otherwise, I'll just keep moving on. So let's see, this month's focus is on ignition fuel. There's a link to the website there. I would recommend if you're, people probably don't have access to this document. Do they have access to this document? Can people click on the slides link and actually go to the slides? I guess I'm speaking to the void at this point. How about I copy the link and paste it into the chat? All right, I made this publicly accessible, so you all can either follow along or save it for later. Let's go to that now. And I think what I'm going to have to do is, it's probably too big. Can I get a verbal thumbs up that everyone can see this?
Yep.
All right, great. All right, so I'm going to start this off by just running through a little bit of background about ignition fuel, what it is, how we got here, and then I will transition into some demos, which will inevitably break, but I am crossing my fingers. Okay, so what is fuel? It's basically a web application designed to host simulation assets. I put a couple simulation assets on here just to give you an idea of the scope. It's particularly not tied directly just to robotics. If you want to put sharks or subway trains, what have you, it's fair game. As long as it follows the SDF spec, you're pretty much good to go. So we've been hosting, and other people have been hosting content for autonomous driving worlds, underwater worlds, subterranean environments. So the list is growing. So it's awesome to see. So the reason why we did create this website is partially to encourage people to contribute models and worlds, and also to make it easier to find and acquire these simulation assets. So we also had a goal of trying to create this as a cross-simulator, cross-platform tool. So there's really nothing specific in Fuel that is tied directly to, say, Ignition Gazebo or another simulator or game engine for that matter. If you have a tool that utilizes or can read SDF, you should be all set in terms of accessing and using these simulation assets. One of the other things that we addressed from the get-go was model versioning. You can think of this as standard simulation, standard software versioning. So basically creating different releases of a model and being able to utilize specific versions in simulation. All right, I only touched a little bit upon the architecture of Fuel. I didn't want to do a deep dive into all the nuts and bolts on how it's structured, but it is all open source, so you're more than welcome to go check out the source code as needed. From a high level, this is basically a backend server written in Golang that offers a REST API. Under the hood, the server is talking to some assets or resources hosted on AWS, like SQL databases and file systems and so forth. On the front end, there's an Angular app, which you can access at app.ignitionrobotics.org. There's also a nice little app button right off of the main ignitionrobotics.org website. Oh, and I left off of here the Ignition Fuel Tools library. This is a C++ library that is another client to the REST API, which I'll get into in a little bit. So how did we get here? We didn't just sit down one day and decide that we want to make yet another website to do something. We originally started back in the day shipping models with Gazebo distributions. So this was prior to, I would want to say, around 2012, as we're building up to Gazebo 1.0. The nice thing about this is it's super convenient. We can just have all our models, all the worlds in one repository, bundle it up and ship it out. This proved to be not scalable at all. There's no reasonable way we can put hundreds or even sometimes tens of models within a distribution and have it scalable and maintainable. So we moved the models out of the main code base into a separate repo with a web server running alongside it. That's hosted at models.gazebosim.org. It's still active and used by Gazebo Classic version 9 and 11 these days. So this was a relatively easy improvement to make. It's a little bit more scalable, a little bit easier to make contributions to the models without having to touch a code base. However, it still faced some problems such as scalability in terms of large binary files. Repositories aren't really designed to hold large images or meshes. And our models were growing, the number of models was growing quite rapidly. So by the time we started working on Fuel, we probably had over 100, maybe a little bit more in that repository. So this Fuel is basically meant to address these scalability issues and improve user experience and address some of the other goals that I mentioned a couple slides back. There's a cost to this. This is yet more code that we have to maintain, release, and develop. However, that's kind of in our wheelhouse, and we think the benefit that you get from Fuel is worth the extra cost of maintenance and development. All right, so you could then ask the question, why did we create this instead of using something else that's out there? We did look at other options, potentially hosting things on a service like Sketchfab, or name your favorite mesh hosting service. This didn't quite fit the bill. They're mostly designed for hosting meshes, and a lot of the times this ignores some of the robotic aspects like dynamics, kinematics, sensors, and so forth. There are also other open source solutions for data hosting, such as Girder by Kitware. This honestly could have worked. However, it is more aimed at something akin to an S3 replacement. So it's a general purpose data hosting solution. And the primary problem that we had with this was it would miss the opportunity to kind of tailor a solution for the robotics community. And so that's why we headed down this road to create Fuel. It does also give us a little bit of control over the future and the roadmap of Fuel. So just to give you an idea of what's potentially coming down the road, and if you've been participating in the Sub-T challenge, you may have experienced some of these things. One of them being cloud simulation, so basically running simulations in the cloud and being able to visualize and interact with it in real time, and doing other nice things like storing log files and being able to do some analysis on top of those. All right, let's move on to the fun part, how to use Fuel. So I'm going to cover 3 different ways to interact with Fuel, one being the REST API. It's kind of the lowest level. Moving up the stack into Fuel Tools, which is more or less a wrapper around the REST API that is designed to be used on the command line or with other libraries such as Ignition Gazebo. And finally, all the way at the top, the graphical web application. So starting with the REST API, if you've ever interacted with web servers before that offer some kind of REST API, this should feel very familiar. It's mostly JSON going over the wire, pretty standard routes. We've been trying to follow best practices when it comes to security. So there's, encryption and authorization. I'll touch upon access tokens, which are a secure way with some caveats to access private or secure routes from clients, mostly from the command line interface. There is some API documentation. Let's see what happens if I click a button here. Yes. If you're familiar with Swagger, this will look pretty familiar. There's all the high-level organizations of the routes here, and you can let's go to models. You can see the basic structure of our URIs here, and I believe this should work. Let's give this one a shot. So I got a list of all the models. This might be too small for you to look at, but feel free to go to the API route and play around with it in your own free time. All right, let's go back. So that is the REST API. Moving up one step is Ignition Fuel Tools. So as I mentioned, this is a C++ library, ships with Ignition, I believe ever since Acropolis. That's the repo. And the whole point of this is just to make it a little bit easier to access the REST API and also integrate with other applications. So Ignition Gazebo uses this under the hood. So in a similar way, if you want to my previous demo of downloading or seeing the list of available models, you can run a simple command like the following on the command line to get all of the models that I own, all the public models that I own. All right, and moving all the way up to the top, we're at the web application itself. So this is basically just a graphical interface sitting on top of the REST API, and it's here mostly to add some niceties to make life a little bit easier, add honestly some bling to make it look a little bit better, and then there's some other features like search and access tokens and user organization and web visualization, which you all might find useful. And I'll go over a few of those in the demo section. But before getting there, I just want to touch upon privacy and security. We have made pretty much a policy not to store private information on Fuel. So the most that we do is say store your email address if you create an account, and that's basically there just to identify people when you log in. So we pretty much rely on OAuth providers, and we don't want to store passwords and things of that nature, mostly because we're scared of doing something wrong. And there's always news stories of people accessing databases and getting access to private information, and we just want to avoid that. So that's our stance on private information. There is a little loophole here. You can obviously upload models and worlds to Fuel, and if you choose to upload your passwords or whatever, that is kind of on you. Let's see, in terms of security, we're doing, everything's encrypted and trying to follow best practices. If you do notice something odd or weird, or you think there is a security hole, please let us know and we'll address it as quickly as possible. All right, it's demo time. I think I'm going to have to quickly stop presenting and share my entire screen so you can see a terminal. All right, bear with me. All right. Let's see, I should have couched these in use cases. So the first use case is, let's say you just want to use some of the models and worlds that you've found on Fuel. And for this example, I'm going to use a minecart. Should be this one. So let's say you've navigated here all by yourself and you say, I want to use this in Mission Gazebo. What you can do is create a pretty bare bones SDF world. All I have here is just the SDF tag and a world. And I should have that. This is like a cooking show. Look, right at the ready. Okay, if you happen to be on a model, there's this little copy snippet tag. So you can just click on that, copies everything to the clipboard, and you can paste it into your SDF world. If you save this and run it, everything should be happy. And there you go, you have the minecart. So I've already downloaded this, which is why it came up so quickly. But let's quickly jump into what actually happened under the hood. In your home directory, you will find a .ignition folder, and if you keep digging underneath there, you'll go to the fuel.ignitionrobotics URI that just kind of differentiates potential different fuel servers. And this model is owned by Open Robotics, and it's a model. And if I go into minecart engine, I should see a number. So this is the model that I downloaded. The number is the version. So if you see a number 3, that should be the latest version listed on the web page. And at that point, if you go in there, you should have your typical model information. You can say to use a very specific version. So if I go back to my example, let's say I want to use version 1 of the minecart, you can add a little 1 version number after the URI, at the end of the URI. And if you run that, let's see. This will take just a second longer because now it's downloading the new version, and it comes up, and you'll notice that I made a mistake when I first made this model. It's super tiny, but you did get a new version. So if you go up, pop up 1 under minecart, now you have both version 1 and 3. So if you leave the number off, basically you'll get the latest version. If you put a number on, you're telling Ignition Fuel Tools to use that specific version. All right. I will mention I can't see any of you, so if you're using the little hand icon, I won't be responding. So if you want to get my attention and ask a question, you'll probably have to unmute yourself and speak up. Okay.
There was a question in the chat about, oh, but Luis just answered it. Does the SDF version have to be 1.6? Fuel accepts any SDF version.
Cool. Thanks, Steve. Yeah. Let's see. It's also, how do I get out of this? Okay. You can also run fuel worlds from the command line. So fuel holds both models and worlds. So if you run this command, of course I can't select while presenting. Great. I can just copy this, run on the command line, and that should load a fuel world. This is a Ignition Dome demo that I believe Louise created. In a similar way, if you happen to go to the Ignition app and you find a world that you want to run, I'll just go to the same one. You can, again, click the snippet button here, and instead of editing a world, since this is a world, you can just drop it into the command line, and that will do the same thing. All right, so that's how you can use models and worlds in Ignition Gazebo, which under the hood is just using fuel tools. You can also just directly download models. There's a download link on both models and worlds, and if you click this, it'll just download the zip file, which may or may not be useful depending on what you're trying to do. While I'm here, this was my test model. I need to delete this in order for my follow-on demos to work. Okay. Let's see, it's also, let me make this bigger. It's also possible to download using Ignition Fuel tools. So you can run Ignition Fuel download like that on the command line, except I did something wrong. What did I do wrong? Malformed URI. Aha, thank you. Let's see, what is it? Oh yeah. There's more stuff here. Well, I definitely have done something wrong here.
The quotes are the weird quotes. You need to replace them with.
Oh, look at that. That is fancy. Thank you. And now it works. All right. So that's how you can download a model from the command line. You can also download an entire collection. So while I'm talking about collections, I might as well go show you what a collection is. This is basically a way to logically organize models into some category or some collection. Everyone's free to create a collection, such as Allison Daxton created a suburb sim collection, which looks like it consists of different types of models she found on Fuel that would belong in the suburbs. So if you want to download one of these, you can, instead of specifying a model route, you can specify a collection that you want to download. And the other options here through Fuel Tools is the -J option, which will let you specify the number of threads to use while downloading models. This could just speed things up. And you can also say whether you want to download just models, just worlds, or both. Collections can consist of both models and worlds. I am not going to run this command right now because the sub-T tech repo is pretty large. But if you choose a different one, feel free to try downloading an entire collection. All right. That kind of covers the basics of how to download models and worlds and use them in Ignition Gazebo. Of course, you can also upload models and worlds. The first way to do it is just through the upload form on Fuel itself. So you access this by going to the plus icon in the upper right, and you can upload a model or world, fill out the form, and you'll end up with a new model. I will mention that you have to be logged in. So I just log myself out. It will give you a little warning that you need to log in. And the reason for that is all models are tied to a particular owner, whether that's an organization or a user. It's part of the URI, and we also didn't want to open ourselves up to a whole bunch of spam and inappropriate content just coming into a website. So that acts as a little bit of a barrier to prevent that type of behavior. From the command line, there's also an option to upload using Ignition Fuel tools. You'll notice this new command line option at the end, which is a private token. I think I'll get into that a little bit more in the next slide, but this is a way, more or less a way to specify or tell Fuel server who you are using a special token. If you're familiar with GitHub tokens, they basically operate in the same way. In terms of inappropriate content, please don't upload inappropriate content. We will take it down. If you want to know what inappropriate content consists of, there's a little, oh, I logged out. 1 second. If you upload a new model, they'll give you a little warning at the bottom, don't break copyright law and all that good stuff. And if you want some more information, there's a little help page that tells you what is inappropriate, what is not. If you do happen to run across something that is inappropriate, let's say this Rescue Randy is copyright information or something of that nature, you can use this flag icon over here, select what is wrong with it. Let's say it's breaking copyright and report it. I'm not going to do that because they'll just send me an email. So they'll basically notify us and we'll take action at that point. All right, let's cover private models. So you can upload models either publicly or privately. So public basically means everyone will be able to see it, download it, copy it, so forth. There is copyright information that is attached to a model, so you can choose what copyright you want to use for your model. A private model means that only the owner can see it. So an owner in this case can either be an individual or an organization. If the owner is an organization, then everyone in the org can see it, but people outside the org cannot. So let's run through just a little demo. Let's make sure I'm in the right directory. So on disk, I have this backpack. It's a pretty standard model, nothing crazy going on here. If I want to upload it from the command line, I use the upload option. I tell it the server that I want to use, in this case, field.ignitionrobotics.org. And I will mention this is, since this is all open source, you can spin up your own Fuel servers if you want. The -m option tells Fuel Tools the directory to upload. So I'm going to upload a backpack. P indicates that it's going to be private, and I need to pass in a private token. So at this point, let's talk about tokens a little bit more in depth. So if you're logged in, we have to be logged in to create tokens. That's the way that we can associate a particular user with a token. If you go to settings, there's an access token tab up here. You can create an arbitrarily number of access tokens. You have to give it a name. I'll create one for the community meeting. Up pops a little window, and this is the only time that you'll have access to this new token. So I recommend copying it, and I will just paste it here to keep it around. So a little bit of information here. You'll see when a token was created, the last time it was used, and this little prefix is a more or less a key to I hope I didn't mess it up. So the first part should match the first part up to the period of the token. And the reason this is here is just to make it a little bit easier for you to organize yourself. If you happen to have a lot of keys and storing them in one location, let's say, you can map keys to different accounts as needed and revoke the ones that you are no longer using. Okay, so let's try this out. Where was I? Let's run the upload command, and I will give it the token that I hopefully didn't mess up. Oops, quotes again. Dun, 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 dun. What did I do wrong? I probably... Okay, that time worked. Okay, so I have now uploaded a private model. So I'm logged in. I should be able to see it. You can go to your profile. This is the backpack I just uploaded. There's a little indication that this model is private. If I open up, could have sworn I opened up an incognito tab. Oh, it's appearing behind. I see. Okay, so if I go to app.ignitionrobotics.org, I'm not logged in. If I try to use this route, I should have a bad time. Yep. And you can, after the fact, go ahead and make this public. Just click the edit button, make it public. And now this route should work, which is fantastic. While I'm here, I might as well show off what you can do on this model details page. Just on the first part, you get a description. I could have associated categories with this or tags, and that lets you basically categorize and be able to search over models of a particular type. For example, if I go up here and I can type in categories, what's good categories? Animals? Oh, wait, that's not an animal. Interesting. But this should have the animal category. So apparently someone thinks this is an animal. Oh, we think it's an animal. That's not good. All right, so you can do that. You have license information down here. And if you want to reference this in a paper or whatnot, you have some BibTeX information as well. Clicking on model files, you can download individual model files if you just want to pull down some thumbnails or the mesh or PNGs. You can see which collections this model belongs to. You can add it to collections up on the top using the Add Collection button. And you can associate additional metadata to models. Basically, this is key value pairs. You can access metadata by editing this. So you can say like type JanSport if you want to, and you can use this if you have a use of being able to filter additionally on just arbitrary key value pairs. So there's also a nice little 3D button here, which will let you visualize this model using 3JS. Just kind of rotate around it. So this is a static viewer of this model. You get some basic information on the right, size and whatnot. I covered. You can always like a model, download it, copy the snippet. If you find a model that you that belongs to somebody else and you want to modify it, you can clone it or copy it. If you click this button, you can copy this model to a different owner, give it a different name, and then you can make your changes as needed. The collection button, this will let you both create a collection and add models to a collection. We talked about the flag button, and the edit button lets you make modifications. Okay, right, moving down in the private models, you'll also need a fuel token, access token to download private models. If you don't specify the header on the command line, when you try to download a private model, you'll get an error.
There's a question in chat that says, can you have collections of collections?
No, you cannot have collections of collections. If I'm not sure the use case of that. Oh, I can see that. Feel free to suggest that on our issue tracker. We are more than welcome contributions as well. Let's move on to web visualization. So I showed you one aspect of it. You can visualize models. I believe you can also visualize worlds. Let's open one of these guys. So when you click this 3D button under the hood, it's downloading the all the simulation assets, all the materials and models and textures and whatnot, and putting it in your browser's cache. So depending on the size of the world or size of the model, it'll take longer. This is let's make this full screen. So this is a world used in sub-T. So this one's pretty large, and you can kind of play around with it as you like, get a sense of what the world is like before you download it. You can also visualize running simulations. So I am going to run a world that comes with Gazebo, and let's say you're in a situation where you can only run the server. I'm giving it the -s, so it's only gonna run the Gazebo server, not pop up a GUI. You can then visualize this world on a web page using a launch file. This is a pretty bare bones Ignition launch file that sets up the WebSocket server plugin and exposes the WebSocket server on port 9002. Again, I have that all set up here, and if I launch that, I should be able to go to this visualization button here. We expect 9002, and if you just connect to it, now you can see the running simulation. And you can even do this with more complicated worlds. Let's do one of those. Where was I? I'm going to run in this case, a sub-T world, and I'll run the teleop as well while I'm at it. So, oops. This should still be okay, and if I connect to that, I should get a world with a robot in it. Let's see if I can make both of these appear at the same time. So let's see, I should be able to follow that robot, excuse me, in Gazebo, and down here, I'll also be able to follow it. If everything works appropriately, yeah, they should be more or less in sync. Right, so this is basically web visualization. If you ever want to visualize a simulation using a browser page and you have a URI, publicly accessible URI, you should be able to do that through the Fuel website. All right, and the last thing on my list was just kind of preparing you for what's coming. This is under active development. So we are working on a review process for models and worlds. This will be somewhat similar to having pull requests on GitHub, so something akin to that. Thumbnail generation. So if you ever uploaded a model to Fuel, the thumbnail generation process is a little bit cumbersome. So we're looking to improve that. Model download can be a little bit slow at times. So we're moving to back this by S3 and take advantage of some additional AWS resources to improve the speed there. And on the cloud simulation side, in the coming months will be sensor data visualization. So being able to see sensor streams on the web page. With that, I'm going to stop presenting and open the floor to any additional questions. Oh, I shouldn't stop presenting. Louise wants me to keep presenting. And I should go back to the community page, which was here, which is not there. While I fiddle around with the internet, does anybody have questions? No? All right. Well, we're back at the agenda. I will hand it over to Louise for the other items on the agenda.
Cool, thank you, Nate. So last meeting, we kind of pulled a bunch of things that people had done in the community and just added links here to highlight them, and that seemed to go very well. So this week we also brought some things that we saw on the internet, like on Twitter, on Discourse, on Gazebo community, these websites of people in the community doing stuff using Gazebo, whether it is Gazebo Classic or Ignition Gazebo. So, there are 5 here. Everybody is welcome to add more stuff for us to talk in this meeting or follow-up meetings. The floor is always open. So, Nate, can you click on the first one? I thought that one was very cool. It's a driverless taxi on Gazebo Classic, so it kind of like generates the world from that 2D image and then generates the streets and stuff, and then the taxi drives itself. So I thought it was a cool project on Gazebo Classic to highlight, especially for people who are working on self-driving and stuff. Maybe you're interested in looking into the code for that. Yeah, I don't know if the authors are here or if anyone here knows the authors, but. So the next one is Project Dave, which is an underwater simulation building on top of UUV Sim, which builds on top of Gazebo Classic. And they have their 3.0 release with a lot of like different sensor data generation with a lot of new features. So yeah, the highlights video is pretty interesting. So for people interested in underwater, there's that there for you to take a look. Another one, the next one is like simulating Spot from Boston Dynamics on, maybe you can zoom in, Nate, yeah, on Gazebo Classic as well. It's a tweet. So yeah, if you're using, if you're interested in trying out Boston Dynamics robots and you don't have money to pay for them because they're very expensive, just try them inside Gazebo, and apparently it runs on AWS Cloud RoboMaker, so that's very cool. And then the next 2 are shameless, me plugging in my personal projects. This one is something that I did during the holidays at the end of last year. I can't take credit for the whole thing because I just copied something that Dirk Thomas had done for Ross. So he made like this animation for Ross, which is much bigger, and I thought it would be fun to also do it for Gazebo. So it just goes from like January 2012 and until December 2020, and like kind of agglomerates all of the commits as they are coming to different repositories related to Gazebo. So it's interesting to see like Gazebo Classic World there in blue growing, and then Ignition Development kind of starts there in purple. And there's like a lot of releases going on there with the orange. There's like Gazebo Bridge and all our infrastructure for release and stuff in green. So yeah, if you're interested in seeing the history of Gazebo, I think it's cool. And it keeps like this list of contributors here on the side, which is also nice to look at. What else? And the last one is just a video of a presentation that I did last year that I don't think I've talked about it in previous meetings. Just like, it's an introduction to Ignition. It's focused on all of the ways that you can customize simulation. It's a live demo. So if people are interested in learning a little bit more, like a high level view, this was targeted at people who are not roboticists, so it's very high level. But yeah, like if people are interested in seeing this presentation, it's available. Is there anything that anyone else would like to highlight? Personal projects? Professional projects? Otherwise, I'm done, Nate.
All right. Thanks. I guess in that case, we've run off the meeting agenda, so we can wrap up for today. All right. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you.
Bye.